So we're going to talk about the Savage soundtrack. Did you go to any of the screenings last night?
Yes, I went. I went to the cast and crew. I think it was yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So what is it like for you to see the film up on the big screen like that after working on it for so long?
We have mixed it at Park Road Post down in Wellington, which is you watch it on a big screen all the time. So I watched it so many times, but we mixed it a year ago.
Right.
And then we went to the London Film Festival with that, and I happened to be there, so I got to see it there.
Oh, nice.
But I was way too close to the picture, and it was all still feel very fragmented,
right.
to me, very sequency, but I felt yesterday, I felt quite actually emotional, more about the realization of the humongous effort that it takes to put a film together. When Vicky Pope, the producer, was talking, and it's really, that's the main sensation I was feeling,
Right. Yeah. So according to what I've read, you spent about 8 months working on the soundtrack.
Yeah, it was, what really happened is Sam Kelly, the director, he had a very, very strong and clear idea of that he wanted to create a real internal, external world, with the score, what that means.
Right.
And this is obviously it's my first full-length feature, and I did not know what to expect, and I really wanted to get in as early as possible, and I managed to get in just before they did the first editing assembly. So usually that's very, very early for the composer to jump in.
Right.
And what happened is we had like a couple of months hiatus in the middle, but I kept working on it. Yeah, it was really, really, really long and testing.
I see. Well, what drew you to the project to begin with?
Well, I just finished scoring a film called Ways to See by Jessica Sanderson at Native Audio, and that's where they did all the post-production for this film.
Uh-huh.
So Nick Buckton, the sound designer and supervising sound editor, he actually recommended me for the gig. And then, when this thing all came about, there was quite a few people that wanted to get that job, and I felt that I didn't even know if I'm going to get it or not.
Right.
And what really drew me when I got to read the script, which things got a bit serious, is that I was really intrigued with having a really harsh and loud pictures that operates as a pretty brutal metaphor all are confronted with,
right.
In the day-to-day life.
And yeah, I think for folks, especially, I guess the easiest and laziest comparison in the film is to compare it with Once Were Warriors, but sound-wise, what you do is very different than I think what people are going to expect to hear from the film.
Yeah, it was quite. The thing is, for me personally, Once Were Warriors is a real masterpiece. It's a real cultural masterpiece of how that made me feel when I watched it for the first time.
Right.
And it really united a lot of people together because people identify with that. And I got fortunate enough to actually sit with Lee Tamahori, the director of Warriors.
Oh yeah.
And I told him, hey, look, I'm gonna land a gig that would be compared to your film. Would you mind giving me the exact brief you gave your composer?
Right.
And he's like, sure. And we spent like an hour talking, And I told myself, great, I'm going to do the exact opposite of that.
Well, I think you did too.
uh,
Yes.
I tried. Yeah.
And what did he think of the idea of this film being made and being compared to his?
He's a he's a very, very smart man, Lee, and he's so generous with his knowledge and with his he's actually a lot more graceful than what he would be appear to, and
Yep.
he was just
I run into him at gigs every once in a while, and he seems very friendly and outgoing.
yeah, he's a really cool dude. I mean, he's a good friend, and it's just very authentic person, and I feel like he doesn't really mind those things, comparisons and things like that. He
Right.
just I think he's supportive of any piece of work that comes out of New Zealand. He will try to support it,
Right.
especially when people try to do something different, because it's I think that's the main aim of this film, is to create something quite bold and a little bit different.
Yeah. So now the film is being released tomorrow, and also the soundtrack you're releasing as well as a separate
Yes.
thing. How do you think the music stands up when it's not attached to the film?
That's a fantastic question, actually.
I just
How
thought
do
of it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's definitely tells a chunk of the story of the film, or the emotional space that we try to occupy, and it's
Yeah.
so different to anything else I've done,
Yeah.
because you are there to serve a very particular purpose. You are a department of one department out of many. So it's almost like to watch the film without any sound, or
Yeah.
it's almost like, let's just freeze frames from the film. So I feel like anybody that would listen to it without knowing anything about the film, they will create their own bond, and they will create their own story with it. Some of the pieces are kind of very, very atmospheric and contemplative, and some of them are really right in your face.
Right.
So I feel like I'm quite proud of it being my first full length feature score. And I was telling Sam, the director, I wanted to change the whole order of things, and he was strongly against that. I explained to him that there's some other tunes, there's licensed tracks in the film between the pieces, and it's all have a different kind of journey. But the biggest take I had out of, not one of the biggest takes I had out of working in this environment, is that you have to be in complete surrender all the time, because it's not about you, it's about
Right.
the film.
Yeah.
So I took a similar approach to this one, and I'm just putting it out there and let it do its thing.
Yeah. So like you say, quite a few of the tracks are kind of this ethereal and ambient kind of mood music, but then there are a few that aren't, like Pendulum, which features a little Bushman on it. So
Yes.
tell me how you got him involved, and what that track is all about.
So Pendulum is a track by a band called Little Bushman, and the singer is the amazing Warren Maxwell. And
Right.
for that particular sequence in the film, Sam always had a track that killed me every time I watched it. It was just the wrong track, and he was like, "Cool, if you got a better suggestion." And I didn't have anything and I always knew that I wanted Warren Maxwell to just sing and become part of the texture of the whole film. And he's planted very deep, subtly throughout the film, his voice. And then I told myself, wow, how can I get away from that? And I started looking for tracks together with Sam. And Sam have a really strong opinion, and very, everything's got like an explanation, and the explanations got explanations. and And he's like, Arli, I love that track. Let's just license this track. And I told him, how about we just do a version or on our own?
Right.
So it would just morph to become like part of the score palette, and
Right.
we can control the exact movement and the timings and all of that. And then Vicky Pope, the awesome producer, I just told her, do you think you can pull it off, get Warren Maxwell to sing and do all those other tasks? And she's like, well, I can ask. And and he was like, yeah, cool, keen.
Sure.
And I mean, we had a very, very strong connection straight away. And we had an amazing time recording down in Wellington. And he's such a brave artist. And he would throw himself into the deep, cold water. And he's just such a inspirational musician to work with.
Right.
It was one of my highlights for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's a standout. And you mentioned licensing, and you would think, because the film takes place in kind of three different time periods, particularly in the 60s and in the 80s, there would be a temptation to grab music from those times that everybody kind of relates to. But they didn't do that in this film. Was that a conscious decision?
Well, yes. I mean, we had that's part of the pre-production. I personally really wanted to have a consistent internal state of mind when it comes to the sonic palette.
Yeah.
Because we are following a person through three different periods of his life, that his soul has been broken, and since that moment I really wanted to create a consistent reflection of that. And the only time we actually used the period tracks was if it comes from the scene itself, if it's come from the speakers in a club or things like that. So that was kind of important for me not to push it too hard. And Sam was, again, very instrumental that about anything, he didn't want to push anything hard. Every time I pushed the drama too much hard, it's like, nah, let's back off and off and off. And I love that, I love that we didn't double up on the drama, because as you've seen, it's so intense. And I felt like if you just keep putting the intensity from the picture and the sound at the same time, it might be a bit of an overload.
Right. Yeah. And I'm wondering, in general, was there any discussion among you and the producers and the directors about the actual making of the film and how people were going to react to it in this time period? I mean, it's been 25 years since Once Were Warriors, and there's quite a bit of discussion. Stuff is going on all over the planet that's kind of related to the what's going on in this film. So how was that dealt with when you were making the movie?
Again, I feel like Sam was extremely protective to trying to be as singular as possible and kind of put a bit of a bubble in terms of what exists outside of this project. And every time that somebody mentioned the word Once Were Warriors, he's like, I felt the cringe coming out of his face.
I'm sure. I'm sorry for the many times I've done it already.
I don't. It doesn't bother me, and it's he should take it as a compliment that it's even mentioned in the same way.
Yeah.
Because there's something powerful, bubbling there, but he really just focused on the task, and we. He really, really wanted to create a sensation that get that vulnerability and the high stakes that our main character is putting himself through, and I sort of kind of tried to, rather than being extremely melodic and really tell the story, we sort of lay down a bunch of questions that different audience can answer different questions. You know what I mean? And it was almost using the score as another as another lens, it's another sonic lens. And
Right.
sometimes it's like you in the scene, sometimes you inside of his head,
Yeah.
sometimes it's right behind. And that made it way easier for me to kind of navigate in terms of decision making.
Yeah. Now, I assume that you finished work on the film a while ago, and so you must be working on something else since then. What have you been up to?
Wow, I've been up to quite a few things. I in the process of working on another independent film that is not in New Zealand. It's called Songs for Maria. It's a beautiful little independent kind of experimental film that takes place in Berlin with a director named Carl Gordon, and which this is kind of, they're all having very weird ebb and flow since obviously COVID hit. It's
Yes, I'm
weird.
sure.
And I just accept it. I accept that, this is the new norm,
Yep.
the unpredictable is the new predictable, and it's cool. I just surrender to it. I can't fight it.
There's nothing you can do about it, I guess.
I can't do anything about it. I'm making the music for a documentary called it's an 8-part documentary called Moku. It's about the music, the tamuku of the Maoris. That blows me away.
Right.
The significance and what a deep part of the identity of New Zealand and Maoris in particular, and I'm really honored to be a part of that one.
It's interesting because, I've been here in New Zealand for like 25 years or so, and when I got here, the Moko was kind of something that was kind of kept under wraps, so you didn't see on a daily basis. And now, newscasters on the primetime television are wearing, and it's really made it, I guess, some kind of journey on its own. Is that kind of what the documentary is about?
Yeah, and it's very informative. It's a lot of interviews, so it's quite challenging to make music too.
Yeah.
But I just want to be a part of projects that actually are quite important, and I feel like I was so full of assumptions of why things happen the way they happen, and there's just so much information and knowledge that I just didn't know of why it was forbidden, and so I'm really interested to be a part of it.
Yeah. So is your main focus going to be on making music for films and documentaries and things? Is that your passion now?
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting format because you are constantly pushed to explore your boundaries with really heavy sets of restrictions.
Right.
And I find it fascinating. And actually, if to be honest, I always liked experimenting with sounds and the possibilities that we have with sound waves. And my partner, she's a filmmaker as well, and maybe around 3 years ago, she said, "Look, your sounds will be a good fit for the screen. We can, it can be quite elastic, and you can really shape it to tell stories, and you should consider it." And she's been such an amazing support. And when I tried it for the first time, it was so amazing, that process of creating worlds through sonic momentums, that it's very, very challenging, but very rewarding. And there is really, really no ceiling of how far you can take that. And
right.
I'm so excited.
Well, this seems like a good way to end the talk that we're having on a high note, especially with that's a dark film, Savages. It gets,
yeah.
So hopefully people will
Very
go out and
dark.
see it, and it opens tomorrow. Your album will be out tomorrow as well. It's pretty exciting.
Yes.
So
All
good luck with it all.
platforms and all like that. Thank
Yeah,
you
yeah.
so much. And thank you so much for
My
talking
pleasure.
to
Thank you very much. We'll see you
really
soon.
awesome.